as you know, here in Decorah, the city council established a task force to just investigate the advantages and disadvantages of potentially having a MEU here in Decorah. And so we are gathering all kinds of information so that we can learn as much as we can. And one of the things that has come up in some of our public conversations is wondering what led your city to decide to sell your municipal electric utility. And so really, I've just asked Mayor Wessel to join us here tonight so he could talk with us about that and just kind of explain the circumstances. And he has graciously offered to do that. So no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor George Wessel. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, you're welcome. Hopefully can provide you some information to give you insight, either positive or negative, from your desires up there. I'll go through a little bit of history first of the Hudson Municipal Electricity Utility. Originally, it had been a utility owned by the city for quite a number of years. In about 2008, a group of individuals had a referendum passed moving the administration management of the utility to a separate board of trustees. Prior to that, it had been city council only, and they felt it was not giving full oversight. About that same time, a wholesale purchase agreement was entered into, locking in some rates through Butler County REC and Corn Belt. In 2012, that group came to the Hudson Municipal Electric Utility and said, hey, you could be running into a situation of not being able to buy electricity in the future. So we believe you should lock into a long-term contract. So the board at that time agreed to extend the contract out through 2032 to buy all wholesale power from Butler County and Corn Belt. At the time, back in 2008, 2012, utility had been operating at about a $200,000 a year profit and had what was considered market rates as far as any comparison to other utility entities around. Since that point in time, we found out in about 2016 or 2017 that the rates had kind of inverted. Instead of being in a profitable scenario, it was really a problem to maintain any type of a decent rate structure. We did a rate comparison in 2016, I believe it was 2017, to Alliant Energy out of Cedar Rapids, Mid-American around our area, and about 4 or 5 other utilities. Found out the rates that HMEU was charging was about comparable to Alliant, but Mid-America rates were significantly lower. So we did some more investigation. Our town only has, the only part that the HMEU had was not all of the city of Hudson's territory, because our territory goes all the way to Highway 20, just bordering Cedar Falls. But the utility boards for the HMEU territory was only the downtown area and maybe a half-mile outside. There was one addition of residences on the southwest corner that was developed back in 1993, was a Mid-America territory. Originally, rates were somewhat comparable, but in 2016 and 17, as we're looking through the rates, there was a 25 to 40% rate difference between HMU's rates and Mid-America rates. And at the time in 2017, as we were going through the rate analysis, we were also about only at a break even, and we're considering that we were going to have to raise rates. So we started to do some analysis of our cost structure. At that time, we had approached Butler County about getting out of the contract that unfortunately had been extended through 2032. And they said, no, sorry, your obligation is through us. Because at that time, we had also investigated breaking that contract and going with other entities through the MISO and other organizations to try to buy it. Got a little bit scared about the amount of staff commitment we'd have to put into it, to where you have to do a lot more than the 3 individuals we had as employees, and started working from another legal aspect. And we finally came to the conclusion, and Butler County eventually agreed with us that the contract was that HMEU had to buy all of its wholesale electricity from Butler County, Corn Belt. Our argument was that if HMEU no longer existed, that there would be no obligation, therefore we could walk away from the contract. Based upon that leverage, they agreed that we refunded us some discounts that we had gotten for about 3 years, amounting to about $228,000. And they approved that we could sell it, provided we had voter approval and that we had the state utility board approval. We took it to, after getting an offer from Mid-America, we took it to the vote of the citizens, and they voted 447 to 27, I believe, to dispose of the utility. The billings out of our utility for the last 3 years were running about $1.7 million gross. And the purchase price was somewhere around $1.2 million or $1.3 million for our wholesale electricity. So we were only operating on about a $300,000 spread for all of the staff and all of the upkeep of the system. When we had had Mid-America do us an offer, we did 2 appraisals that came in at around 3.5 million. Mid-America ultimately agreed to pay HMEU $3,810,000 for the utility. They also, HMEU had a building that they sold to the city for $390,000. And then we auctioned off everything that was not needed. There was some equipment, a truck and something else that was sold off. We had operating funds and a surplus reserve fund in case of emergencies. Ended up having a little over $5.1 million that we returned to the ratepayers. Basically, anybody who'd been a ratepayer for 3 years, we gave them all their gross premium back. It was a pretty good deal. At the same time, their rates dropped anywhere from 25 to 40%. And again, we were in a unique situation. We were surrounded by Mid-America. There was no growth that we could have. We were absolutely limited because our growth has been in the Mid-America territory area as opposed to within the HMEU area. We'd also been running, it was becoming more evident that there was a rate difference. So we were having citizens come to us to say, hey, how come the southwest corner of town and the northern tier of the town are on Mid-America and their rates are 25 to 40% lower? We need you to drop our rates. And of course, could not do that without losing money. So the ultimate was pretty easy, as evidenced by the vote of the citizens. Your situation, of course, you're different. The real question that I'm sure you're trying to address, besides what's the rates that you could charge your customers, would you be able to have a profit? And would the Iowa Utility Board even consider you being able to do it? You'd have to have the staffing in place. You'd have to have the infrastructure able to be put in place. So obviously a whole different scenario than what we ran into in Hudson. Really come down to us being a unique shot and having rates that we could look at and take advantage of. Anything else, Carly, that you and I talked about that you wanted me to expound about? Otherwise, I'm just open to any question that can come up.
No, I think you did a fantastic job of explaining that concisely. That was super helpful. Does anybody else in the room or on Zoom have any questions that they would like to ask Mayor George Wessel?
Does Alliant Energy have a presence down in that area as well, or is it basically Mid-America? I don't have the map in front of me, but
it's pretty much Mid-America. In fact, Mid-America has the city of Waterloo as well. West of us, there is some Butler County REC. South of us, Cedar Rapids is Alliant. And also, in my position as finance director at Prairie Lakes Church, we had campuses in Cedar Rapids that were on Alliant. We have our Grinnell campus is on Alliant. And those rates were consistent with the rate comparisons we did, where Alliant was about equal to our old HMEU rates, but again, 25 to 40% higher than what we're able to get with Mid-America.
Well, if nobody else has any questions, we will just call this the fastest MEU task force meeting in history. I really appreciate you joining us. That was super helpful. We have recorded this, so if anybody has, if there may be people who watch it later and have questions at a later time, but for now,
Sure.
that's all we've got. So
Yeah, and
thank you
if
so much.
you betcha, and if anybody has a question, they can email me. You've got my email address, and obviously you've got a whole bunch of pages of 470 some pages that they can delve through and find a lot of other answers.
Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're
All right.
welcome.
Have a
Bye-bye.
wonderful night. Thank you.
Thanks, you too.